On a bright weekend morning in early autumn, the air was crisp but gentle, carrying with it the scent of fallen leaves. For most people, it was just another weekend. But for two families, the Kawa and the Ganda, it was their favorite time of the month, their camping weekend.
4日間も休んで、キャンプなんて最高ですね。
いやー、そうですね。こうして自然の中でお酒が飲めるとか、幸せもんですよ。
最高ですよ。ワイン飲みます？
いいですね。
どうぞ。
あれこれ、クリーブワインってやつですよね。
そうです。よく知ってます。さすがですね。ぜひぜひ飲んでください。
はい。
The Kawas lived on the 8th floor of a quiet apartment building, their windows always filled with small potted plants, and the laughter of their daughter, Aiko. Just a few doors down lived the Gandas, a cheerful couple with a young son named Ren, who often played with Aiko in the shared courtyard. The two families had met years ago during a neighborhood cleanup event, and ever since, their friendship had become a small but beautiful part of their daily lives. What made their bond special wasn't just proximity or convenience. It was the way they understood each other's rhythms. The husbands, Kawa and Ganda, both worked demanding jobs in the city. Yumi, Kawa's wife, often said that life in Tokyo felt like a marathon, one that never stopped, even when you were tired. Lisa, Ganda's wife, would laugh and reply, "That's why we have our camping trips, to remember what it feels like to breathe." Every month, rain or shine, they escaped the concrete maze of the city and ventured into Japan's breathtaking countryside. It wasn't a luxury trip with fancy hotels or expensive meals. It was simple, tents, home-cooked food, stories by the campfire, and laughter that echoed beneath the stars. These moments were their way of slowing down, reconnecting, and reminding themselves of what truly mattered. That particular weekend, the destination was a valley nestled at the base of Mount Asama, a place painted with the full palette of autumn. Maple leaves burned bright red, the air smelled faintly of pine, and the gentle rustle of wind through the trees created a melody that seemed to calm every anxious thought. It was the kind of scenery that made you feel small in the best possible way, humbled by nature, yet comforted by it. Lisa prepared their shared meal plan, checking each item twice. "You always think of everything," Yumi teased. Lisa smiled. "No, I just don't want the men to forget the essentials again." They both laughed, remembering last month's trip when Kawa had forgotten the matches, and Ganda had tried to light a fire with a magnifying glass and a lot of optimism. Behind their humor was something deeper, the kind of friendship that only comes from shared memories and gentle understanding. They knew each other's worries, celebrated each other's small victories, and offered comfort when life felt too heavy. In the city, they were often too busy to talk, but in the quiet of nature, their conversations flowed easily about family, dreams, and the small lessons that make a marriage or friendship stronger. That evening, as they sat by the fire roasting sweet potatoes, Yumi and Lisa began their familiar routine, sharing stories about their husbands. Not complaints, not gossip, but light-hearted tales that always ended in laughter. It was their way of reflecting, not on what was wrong, but on the humor hidden in everyday life. The husbands, pretending not to listen, smiled quietly. Under a sky scattered with stars, surrounded by people who understood one another without words, there was no need for grand declarations. Just a quiet, content realization that happiness didn't come from perfection, but from shared imperfection, from learning, forgiving, and finding joy in the small things. It was in that stillness, between laughter and the crackling of the fire, that Yumi thought to herself, Maybe this is what peace really looks like. Not silence, not stillness, but the warmth of being together.
テントだけで3つもあんのよ。2個も3個もいらないよね。確かにそんなんだったら。
また俺の悪口
そうよ。
やめてくれよ、夏川さんの奥さんの前でさ。
主婦はいろいろ不満があるの。
なんのだよ。
キャンプ用具でカッコつけても内面がダサかったら意味ないの。尊敬されない父親になるわよって。
何、まだ新しいテント買ったこと怒ってんの？
そうです。
なんでもうやめろよ、もう本当に。
二人とも、ね、喧嘩やめましょう。ね、そうだ、焚き火の火がもうできてるから、みんなで囲んで座りませんか？椅子とか持ってさ。
The campsite slowly came to life. The sounds of boiling water, the sizzling of the campfire, and the croaking of frogs echoed through the forest. Yumi poured hot tea for Lisa, while Lisa prepared rice balls filled with pickled plums. The aroma of roasted seaweed mixed with the scent of pine, enveloping everyone in a peaceful, comfortable feeling. Dinners like this were their favorite, nothing fancy, but filled with conversation and laughter. Kawa told a story about trying to cook instant noodles during a thunderstorm in college. And Ganda added that his first camping trip ended with him setting up his tent upside down. They giggled so hard, they almost spilled their tea. During dinner, they decided to explore each other's lives more and more. Each question, each answer, each laugh became more and more friendly. And after each sentence, there was the sound of rustling nature. Yumi and Lisa sat next to each other. Sometimes they looked at the surrounding scenery. "You know," Yumi said, glancing at the firelight through the dry branches, "I think nature has a way of reminding us of a sense of balance." Lisa nodded thoughtfully. "Yes. In the city, I often forget to slow down. Out here, even time feels softer." Their conversation drifted between silence and laughter. They talked about their children, their husbands' small quirks, and how sometimes love wasn't about grand gestures, but about understanding the small moments, like who makes the morning coffee, or who remembers to pack the bug spray. Their mock argument made everyone laugh. Even Lisa shook her head in amusement. It was moments like these of pure, simple joy that made their trip so meaningful. The words hung in the air, simple but profound. Lisa smiled, thinking about how true that was. Sometimes it wasn't the grand lessons that stayed with you, but the quiet reminders whispered in unexpected places. They spent hours around the campfire talking, laughing, and sharing sandwiches on a flat rock, warmed by the campfire's glow. And that night, the fun doubled when Yumi introduced everyone to the campsite manager's arrival. He arrived with a flourish, and everyone applauded his arrival. The smell of grilled food mixed with the crackle of the fire, and somewhere in the distance, an owl called softly. The families sat together, sharing stories and warm rice from bamboo bowls. The conversation faded into comfortable silence. The stars began to appear, one by one, until the entire sky shimmered with light. The children fell asleep, leaning against their parents, and the fire burned low, humming softly like a lullaby. In that moment, the families didn't need anything more. No screens, no noise, no plans. Just the peace of being present, the comfort of friendship, and the quiet reminder that happiness often hides in the simplest places. The next morning began with the rustle of falling leaves on the tent. At first, the wind was gentle, a slow, rhythmic melody, that made everyone want to curl up in their sleeping bags a little longer. But within minutes, the sounds outside became more lively. Kawa unzipped the tent flap and peered outside. "Looks like nature's decided to give us a challenge today," he said, half laughing, half concerned. Yumi sat up, brushing hair from her face. "We should make sure everything's tied down. The last thing we need is another flying tarp incident." Outside, Ganda checked the ropes holding the tent together. His hair was damp with sweat, but he was still grinning. "It's just the wind," he called back. "Adventure, huh?" Lisa handed him a backpack and shook her head. "Adventure is fine, but don't turn it into a survival movie." The atmosphere became a little more romantic. Everyone was excited, feeling the joy. Everyone was thinking about responsibility, about balance, about how even the smallest moments can disturb your peace if you let them. The sun was beginning to rise. The forest seemed to sparkle, dewdrops hanging from every branch like glass beads. But somehow, the warmth between them had faded. It was Lisa who broke the silence. "You know," she said, stirring the pot of soup over the fire, "every time something unexpected happens, I realize how much I still have to learn about patience." Yumi looked up from where she was drying Aiko's shoes. "Patience," she repeated, as if testing the word. "That's true. It's easy to be calm when everything's perfect." Ganda nodded. "That's why camping is like life. You plan for sunshine, but sometimes you get rain, and you learn to enjoy it anyway." His words made everyone smile. The tension began to fade like mist in sunlight. That morning, everyone sat quietly around the fire again. The air smelled of damp earth and smoke. There was a long, peaceful pause. The kind that doesn't need filling. The kind that feels like healing. As night fell, the stars returned, brighter than before, as if rewarding them for weathering the day's storm. The campsite glowed gently in the cool mountain air. The fire crackled, the children drifted to sleep, and the adults sat together in quiet reflection. Sometimes, peace isn't the absence of trouble. It's the way you hold on to kindness, even when things go wrong. And as Yumi looked around at the firelit faces her husband, her friends, she realized that perhaps each trial was just a gentle reminder that love, like a campfire, needs to be nurtured, not controlled. The final morning arrived quietly, with sunlight dripping through the leaves like honey. The storm had washed the air clean, leaving behind the scent of pine and damp earth. A soft mist curled above the grass, and birds were already singing, as if to say, "You made it through." Yumi stood outside her tent, holding a cup of steaming green tea. Nearby, Kawa and Ganda were packing up the tents, joking about who had tied the knots better. Lisa, as always, was making sure nothing was left behind, her calm, steady rhythm grounding everyone. For a long while, Yumi simply stood there, listening to the rustle of leaves, the soft chatter of her friends, the sound of life at its most peaceful. There was no rush, no noise, no deadlines. Just a stillness that asked nothing of her except to be present. Lisa joined her, holding a cup of tea of her own. "You look peaceful," she said with a smile. Yumi nodded. "I think so." I realized how much I tried to control everything at work, at home, even little things like what dinner would be like. But here, nature reminded me that not everything needs control. There are things that just need attention. Lisa's eyes softened. "That's beautiful. Maybe that's what these trips teach us, to care without controlling, to guide, not to grip." The two women smiled at each other, the kind of understanding smile that comes only between friends who've shared both laughter and silence. That evening, families gathered for their last dinner together. They sat on picnic blankets that had witnessed years of storytelling, eating, and spilled tea. Everyone laughed, but beneath the laughter was something tender, a shared sense of gratitude. They all knew these moments wouldn't last forever. Children grow, schedules change, life moves on. Yet for now, it was enough to sit together, breathe, and remember that happiness often comes in borrowed hours like these. Smiles, small gestures, simple words, but somehow deeply meaningful. And so, the weekend ended, not with fireworks or grand farewells, but with something gentler, something more lasting. A quiet reminder that joy doesn't need to be searched for in distant places. Often, it's waiting right where you are, in the warmth of shared laughter, the courage to let go, and the wisdom to keep your heart open. In the rush of daily life, we often forget that happiness isn't found in perfection, but in presence. Like the families who learn to slow down and listen, we too can find peace in simple things, a shared meal, a kind word, or a walk beneath the trees. Every moment offers a chance to begin again, gently, gratefully, and together. This video promotes emotional well-being, understanding, and relationship mindfulness. It encourages viewers to reflect on the values of empathy, trust, and communication, essential foundations for a healthy and happy life.